Thomas Burgess, Eddie San Maria. I'd like to start off by asking you both to write down 5 objects that you could not live without in that first segment there.
Okay, there's a lot of things.
5 objects you could not live without. I'm just gonna like my 5 most important objects in my life, probably.
It's like
I would say
like
keep it very current.
Like if you're like stranded on an island.
Oh, honestly,
Like-
those are really helpful.
Like if you're
But not like things that you've never had before, things that you have right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got some.
I got one more.
Phone.
Yeah.
I wrote phone purely because of like networking and searchability.
For knowledge. I got it.
Okay. With those things in mind, write down 3 objects that you think are necessary for human society.
3 objects that are necessary for human society.
And they can be big or small. The
Yeah.
size does not matter.
Yeah.
This could be as big as your house or as small as an action figure.
I remember you talking about these little fishies.
Mm-hmm.
Are these those fishies?
Yeah,
What was it called again?
they're called the Pacific Spiny Lumpsuckers. This is our art and ecology class, so it was more focused on the ecology segment of it until this last project here. So most of the quarter what we've been doing is researching an organism that is assigned to a habitat group. So my habitat group was marine kelp bio, and my organism was the Pacific Spiny Lumpsucker. What I've discovered personally about the lumpsucker, that I've formed some more kind of mental, physical attachments, emotional attachments to this creature. And one of those things would be that I feel that humans and lumpsuckers have more in common than would be perceived at first. So what we can see here in the habitat is an environment that is connecting lumpsuckers to humans through one object in particular. And I'd like to ask you guys what you think that object would be.
Let me say the dog.
A dog?
And I'm going with the rocks. Well, it looks like the rocks are some sort of source of nutrients, or it could be used as shelter and or a home.
In terms of connecting the humans to the lumpsuckers, the people built the dock that the organisms are using as shelter. That's kind of like fish do that too.
Yeah.
They use man-made stuff as shelter all the time.
So the Pacific Spiny Lumpsucker, you can see right here, the males are the orange ones. The blue ones are the females. One thing that I've learned about them is that they have a mutual symbiosis with barnacles. The females will actually lay their eggs inside the cavities of the barnacles, and then the males will then latch onto the barnacles to either cover them up completely, like cover the cavities and cover the eggs within, or they'll just sit on the rocks and make homes near the barnacles to protect them from whelks and other creatures that eat barnacles. So they are benefiting the barnacles by protecting the barnacles, and the barnacles are protecting the eggs of the lumpsuckers, and we call this a mutual symbiosis. One thing that's really interesting to note about the lumpsucker is that they used to be more of a fish than they are now. They've adapted in a sense, but it almost seems backwards to say that they've adapted, because looking at them now, they're completely inefficient at swimming, ineffective swimmers who live in the underwater world. In order to do this, they've adapted in a weird kind of way where their pelvic fins that they used to swim with have evolved into these arms, essentially.
It's like they look really weird.
It's pretty weird to describe what they are exactly, but they still are called the pelvic fins. They're lower down on the fish now, right towards the bottom of their both sides, their left and their right side. And what they do is they use their pelvic fins as arms to grab onto things, and they don't really get much grip from things. So a new fin has actually developed on them, and it's right on their abdomen, and all it does is it retracts and creates suction. They are not like cleaner fish in the sense where they like stick onto things and then they have a mouth. They don't actually really interact with the things that they're stuck to like that. They don't clean anything. They're a regular fish with a regular mouth right in the front that they use to eat, and it's just this kind of funny way that they've adapted to survive in their own habitats. The human connection that I'm trying to make between lumpsuckers and humans is that humans are also quite fragile in our land-air environments. I mean, we're more fragile than we give ourselves credit for sometimes. But there's a reason why we live in a house, why we latch on to so many things in our life to survive, and I think it's really similar to how these lumpsuckers need certain things around them in order to survive, literal objects in order to survive. And here we can see lumpsuckers actually attached to a man-made dock. These are actually places where lumpsuckers have been found before because they don't live in very deep waters, so they can come up and interact with human things, and we've found them stuck to organisms, stuck to man-made objects, and stuck to rocks as well. That's mainly what they stick to. So one of the reasons why I asked you guys about objects that you cannot live without is because my question that I've been posing is, how have humans had to adapt to COVID and new policies with health and new ways of living, essentially? Mm-hmm. I really want to know what objects you guys specifically have found yourselves attached to for survival, similar to the way the lumpsucker has to attach to things for survival.
Gosh, for survival specifically? I mean, I don't know. I feel like in the day and age that we live in now, like, everything is, like, given to us so easily that I don't feel like I'm fighting to survive. Mm-hmm. And obviously, I think I use my phone a lot. It's very utilitarian. Right. I, like, look stuff up. You can use for networking, like, every way. So that's definitely, like, a very important item that has a big role in my life.
Yeah, I think right now, like, the idea of survival is kind of shifted towards, like, it's less of, like, oh, when are you going to get food? But it's more of, oh, what are you going to be doing with your life in order to get value from it? Mm-hmm. And in that case, a lot of the items that I picked were things that I feel like I could evolve some sort of meaning from. Yeah. And, like, a piano I wrote down a piano just because, I don't know, you can use that instrument to create so much with it that it's pretty much endless. The amount of stuff you can do with it. I think that's kind of part of the adaptation, is trying to find ways that pertain to almost like only inside your house, in ways to find value.
Yeah. Do you guys think that COVID has, not just COVID, but also just maybe negative energy in our world right now? Do you think that's causing adaptation or causing a lack of adaptation?
I mean, I think there will always be like moments when just some sudden change adds a sort of grim nature to the whole to everything. You can just tell when the whole transition, like, everyone was in a pretty bad mood in general. But I think that's sometimes important in order to adapt.
Definitely.
I don't know if I have a good answer to that. I feel like we've had, or if we have any adaptation, it'd be regressing, because we, like, physically, I feel like we're having the ability to forage and stuff is, like, less important now. So, like, one of the biggest adaptations that might come out is the ability to just ambiently be happy without actually doing anything. Because, like, we don't need to forage. Like, our work can be confined to an office space.
Right.
And so we just
really
basically need to be a brain with hands, honestly.
Yeah.
That is true.
I like what you said there about regressing, because another thing that I kind of have been talking about with the lumpsucker is it's like they are evolving. Everybody's always evolving, but it almost seems like they move backwards in terms of what benefits them.
Yeah.
Like, don't you think they should have developed fins to make themselves more efficient at swimming? Mm-hmm. But instead they have adapted in this other way, where it almost seems like they've regressed towards being less of a fish.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Or are we becoming stronger?
It's weird because we're putting a lot of our dependencies on other things. Like, we're creating things to solve a lot of our problems, which it is shifting more technological in that sense.
What does it do to society? Like, what does it do to the way that we interact with each other?
That's interesting, because, like, I feel like depending on who you're interacting with, it definitely matters very different. Like, Mark Zuckerberg interacts with me very differently than he would interact with his wife. Like, there's just so many factors, it's kind of hard to, like, encapsulate that in just one explanation.
Do you think there's a togetherness brought about with regressing, or do you think there's a separation?
Like, right now, like, I think in terms of interaction, there's less interaction, but it's more intimate, because you're only interacting with, like, you know, maybe 10, 15 different people each month.
Right.
But you're interacting with those specific people a lot more. Like, the amount of interaction you're having is probably staying the same, but it's definitely erring towards, like, it's being focused on a smaller group of people.
Okay.
Which is similar to, like, the adaptation where the lumpsuckers kind of stuck onto surfaces and they kind of experience less interaction just because, like, they aren't moving as much. So we're kind of, like, less mobile because of that.
Yeah, so I guess in terms of regression, I think the argument being made is that we are more confined to a more specific environment. I don't know, I find it hard to see it as a regression when it's more of, like, a means to just developing